Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine spending your entire life trying to prove to the people who should have supported you, only to realize they never truly believed in you. What happens when the thing you've worked the hardest for is the very thing they can't accept? Bryn Carter, a woman who walked away from her family's expectations to pursue her own dreams, built a life they never saw coming. But now they finally found out at her restaurant the one they thought was just a fantasy. In the midst of champagne toasts and critiques, Bryn is forced to face the truth. Is success worth it if the people you love most don't understand it? Stick around to find out how one woman's journey of self-discovery shakes the foundation of everything she once knew. The real question is, can you ever truly reclaim your worth when you've already been judged? Let's dive in. The scent hit her before the door even opened. Roasted duck glazed in cherry gastrique, sea salt crust still crackling on the skin. Bryn Carter froze on the limestone steps of Citrine, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she tucked a strand of dark hair behind one ear. Inside, laughter spilled like expensive champagne, clipped, elegant, rehearsed. Her family was already seated. Of course they were. 5 years. That's how long it had been since she'd looked any of them in the eye. 5 years since she'd walked out of her parents' Georgian estate in Charleston with nothing but a suitcase and a dream they didn't consider valid enough to fund. She'd made that walk in silence, her mother's final words hanging behind her like fog. If you insist on playing chef, then you do it without the Carter name. Bryn hadn't spoken back. She didn't have to. The silence would answer for her in due time. Now that time had arrived on her terms in her house with her name hidden beneath the reservations list like a secret waiting to explode. They didn't know. That was the point. When her sister Sloane sent an embossed invitation to her engagement dinner, held, ironically, at the most exclusive restaurant in Chicago, Bryn had smiled. Citrine, the crown jewel she had bled for, the sanctuary she had built in the shadows. She said yes to the invitation, not for reconciliation, not even for revenge, but for something far more complicated. Proof. Not for them. For herself. She entered quietly through the front entrance, a route she hadn't taken in years. Normally she slipped in through the back, her chef's coat stiff with starch, her mind focused on sauces and plating and pacing, but tonight she wore a fitted black dress, understated but immaculate, a single string of pearls around her neck, the only thing left from her grandmother that hadn't been filtered through her mother's obsession with appearances. The hostess blinked in surprise when she saw her. "Miss Carter," she stammered. Your party is already seated." "I know," Bryn said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Don't announce me. Just lead the way." They were at the center table naturally. Her mother Elaine in ice blue Chanel, her father Charles inspecting the wine list like it was a merger contract. Grant, her brother, laughed stiffly at something his wife Brooke whispered, and next to them sat Sloane, effortlessly stunning in designer silk, and Hunter, the fiancé Bryn had never met but already disliked for his smug posture and the Rolex that practically screamed investment banking. Her mother was the first to notice her, and in that single glance, Bryn was 14 again, standing in the drawing room covered in flour, trying to explain why she'd turned down a summer internship to shadow a pastry chef. "Bryn," Elaine said with a cool smile, rising to press a ghost of a kiss on each cheek. "You look, well, we weren't sure you'd actually come." "I'm exactly on time," Bryn replied, glancing at the clock. 7:30, as noted. Hunter's handshake was aggressive, his smile polished to the point of insincerity. "Hunter St. James," he said. "Princeton undergrad. Wharton MBA. Just made junior partner at Blackridge Capital." Of course he had. They toasted with champagne. Bryn herself had selected for Citrine's menu, a vintage so delicate it shimmered, but no one at the table knew that. The toasts were brief, awkward. Her father nodded approvingly at the wine, oblivious to the irony. Her mother eyed Bryn's outfit again, probably trying to calculate which outlet it had come from. "So," Sloane said sweetly. "Still doing the food thing?" Bryn smiled. "Still doing the food thing." The courses began to arrive. Each plate was a small universe, textures layered, colors composed, flavors built to crescendo. And everyone was critiqued with the detached entitlement of people used to Michelin stars but never aware of the sweat that makes them. Her amuse-bouche, a delicate sphere of compressed watermelon and fermented garlic, was dismissed by Sloane with a wrinkle of her nose. "I don't do garlic," she said flatly. When the duck breast arrived, pan-seared perfection, medium rare, rested under warm lights to maintain integrity, Hunter cut in. "This is undercooked," he declared, waving the server over like a bellhop. "Tell the chef to redo it." Jessica, Bryn's most trusted server, looked at Bryn for guidance. Bryn gave a subtle nod. Let them have what they want, even if they didn't understand it. Then came the check. Hunter reached for it. "My treat," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. He opened the black leather folder and froze. His eyes scanned the bill, then narrowed. "There's a mistake," he said, motioning to Marcus, the maitre d'. "You forgot to charge us for the food." Marcus, unflappable as ever, looked briefly at Bryn. She met his gaze with the smallest nod. "There's no mistake, sir," Marcus said smoothly. "The meal has been covered." "By whom?" Charles asked, suddenly alert. Marcus turned with a faint smile. "By Miss Carter." Silence detonated across the table. Bryn stood slowly, the pearls at her throat catching the light. "Welcome to Citrine," she said. "My restaurant." 6 stunned faces stared up at her, the hierarchy of a lifetime cracking under the weight of revelation. Have you ever had to hide your success just to protect your peace? What would you say if the people who doubted you were suddenly sitting in your triumph, unaware it was yours? Bryn has more to reveal, and her family hasn't tasted the final course. The silence at the table felt heavier now, like the weight of 1,000 words that no one dared to speak. Bryn stood at the center of it all, her chest tight with the realization of just how deep the rift between her and her family truly was. They had no words, only stares, and in their eyes, she saw what she had always feared, a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and a hint of anger. For a moment, the noise of the restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the hum of conversations, the sizzling of food disappeared. It was just her, alone in the storm, her breath steady but her heart pounding. Charles was the first to recover, though his voice was laced with something colder than disappointment. "This is impossible. You're telling me all this time you've been running one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city, and you kept it a secret?" His words were clipped, his tone demanding answers. But it was more than that. There was a sense of betrayal, of being left out of the loop, as though she had somehow broken the unspoken contract of family loyalty. Bryn didn't flinch. The questions, the confusion, they didn't scare her anymore. "Yes, Dad," she said, her voice unwavering. "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't need your approval. I didn't want it to be about you finally accepting what I chose to do. This is my work, my passion, and you don't get to own it just because you think you deserve to be a part of it now." Her mother, usually the pillar of calm and control, looked like she might crumble under the weight of it all. The tightness around her lips softened for a second, but her eyes, they still carried that sharp, calculating look. "Why wouldn't you tell us sooner, Bryn? We could have helped, supported you. We've always been your family. All these years, and this is how you repay us?" Her voice cracked, but the accusation was clear. Beneath the sorrow was a simmering resentment, as if all these years of estrangement weren't enough of a sacrifice on her part. Bryn swallowed hard. She'd always known this moment would come, the confrontation, the truth spilling out like an undone thread unraveling a carefully constructed fabric. But what no one had prepared her for was how hollow their words would feel. "I didn't ask for your help. I didn't need it," she said, more to herself than to them. "What I needed was to be seen. For what I am, not for what you think I should be." Sloane, sitting to her left, leaned in, her voice as sweet as poisoned honey. "You've really made it, haven't you? Got your own little empire now, so why hide it? Why make us all look like fools?" Her tone was biting, a touch too rehearsed for comfort, and it made Bryn's stomach twist. The accusation in Sloane's voice was the final blow, more cutting than the dismissals she'd endured in the past. It wasn't just the surprise anymore. It was the underlying suggestion that Bryn had somehow wronged them. as though her success wasn't deserved, but rather a well-played act of deception. The anger bubbled up inside Bryn, a familiar burn that she had kept at bay for years. "You think this was easy for me?" she shot back. "You think I didn't sacrifice everything, my happiness, my security, just to prove to myself that I was more than the failure you saw me as?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time in years, she let the tears sting the back of her eyes. She turned her gaze away, fighting the urge to let them see. The strength she had built, the fortress around her heart, it was cracking. Charles leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. His face was unreadable, but Bryn knew him too well. He was calculating, always calculating. "So what now, Bryn? What do you want from us? Do you expect us to just accept you like this?" His eyes narrowed, and for a brief second, Bryn saw the man she used to fear, the one who demanded perfection without question. Bryn opened her mouth to speak, but the words stalled in her throat. What did she want from them? Did she need their approval now? Did she even want it anymore? The question hung between them, unspoken, as if the very idea of seeking validation from them again was something she couldn't stomach. She had made it without them. But that was the problem. She had made it, and they had nothing to do with it. Their pride couldn't accept that. Not yet. "Do you want me to be proud of you, Dad?" Bryn asked, her voice low but steady. "You always said I wasn't cut out for this, that I couldn't handle it. You were wrong, and now it's too late for me to change that. I'm not that girl anymore." The table was silent, the words hanging in the air. It wasn't just anger that filled the room. It was grief. The grief of lost years, lost connections, and a family that had never understood the depth of her dreams. She had fought so hard to escape their expectations, and now that she had what she wanted, it was somehow too late to go back. Her mother's eyes flickered with something she didn't quite recognize. It was as if, for the first time, Elaine realized how far gone her daughter was, not just from her, but from the world they had built together. There was no saving Bryn now, and that thought seemed to terrify her. "I didn't want this to be a confrontation," Bryn said softly, her tone softer now as she looked at each of them. "But I can't keep hiding who I am. I can't keep playing your game. I've built something that I'm proud of. I did it without you, and I did it for me." The weight of those words hung in the air as her family exchanged glances, some surprised, some calculating, but none of them fully understanding. They didn't know the cost of what she had built. They couldn't. Have you ever been forced to choose between your family's expectations and your own dreams? What happens when the people you love most see your success as a betrayal instead of an achievement? As Bryn turned to leave the table, her heart heavy with the words she hadn't wanted to say, she felt a small, reluctant glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of everything. Maybe it was just the beginning of something new. But it was clear. This family, as it had once been, was gone. What would they rebuild now, and could it ever be enough to bridge the distance she had created? Bryn walked down the quiet corridor of Citrine, the weight of her family's words still lingering in her chest, but now the anger had shifted to something deeper, something that felt more like sorrow. She had revealed her truth, the truth she had hidden for so long. But now, as she passed the polished walls of the restaurant, the realization of what had just transpired began to settle on her. Her family, those she had longed for validation from, now saw her not as the person she had become, but as a betrayal. It was a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. She had broken free, yes, but in doing so she had shattered something within herself too. As she approached the kitchen, where the heat of the stoves and the bustle of the staff had always given her a sense of purpose, she paused. The restaurant was her sanctuary, a place where she had never had to explain herself. Yet tonight it felt almost too quiet, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of everything that had just transpired. She could hear the soft clatter of utensils and the murmur of conversations from the dining room, but it felt distant, almost like she had stepped into another world. "Bryn, you okay?" It was Miranda, her sous chef, coming around the corner, wiping her hands on her apron. She had been with Bryn through every trial, every triumph. The two had built Citrine from the ground up, and Miranda had been one of the few constants in Bryn's life. Bryn managed a half smile, but there was a heaviness to her expression. "Yeah, just a lot to process," she said, her voice quieter than usual. Miranda stepped closer, her eyes narrowing in concern. "You did the right thing. You know that, right? You didn't need to hide anymore. You're not just a chef, Bryn. You built this, and no one can take that away from you." Bryn nodded, but her mind was still back at the table, replaying the expressions on her family's faces, the confusion, the hurt, and beneath it all, the unspoken words that hung in the air. She had hoped they would see her as the person she had become, the person who had earned her place at the table. But instead, they had seen only their own disappointments reflected in her success. And then there was Sloane. The sharpness in her sister's voice still echoed in Bryn's mind, cutting deeper than she cared to admit. She had always been the perfect daughter, the one who followed the rules, who played the game. But Bryn had stepped off that path, and now Sloane saw her as an outsider, someone who had betrayed their shared history. In the end, it was the cruelest blow of all, the realization that even Sloane, the person Bryn had once hoped to find solace in, had chosen the family's narrative over hers. "I don't know what to do with all of it, Miranda," Bryn confessed, her voice breaking just slightly. "I thought I was ready to face them. I thought maybe they'd understand. But now I feel like I've lost everything. Again." Miranda placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her the same strength she had always provided. "You didn't lose anything. You gave them the truth. And if they can't accept it, then that's on them, not you." Bryn took a deep breath, steadying herself. The silence of the kitchen felt like a balm to her raw emotions. It was here in this room that she had found herself, where she had pushed past the expectations, the doubts, and the loneliness. It was here that she had learned what it truly meant to create, to build something from the ground up, something that was hers and hers alone. But then the door swung open, and the faintest sound of footsteps approached from the hallway. She turned, her heart skipping a beat when she saw Ethan standing there, his face unreadable. "I know you're probably not expecting me," he said quietly, his voice tinged with hesitation. "But I had to come." Bryn raised an eyebrow, unsure of what to expect. "What is it, Ethan?" He hesitated, glancing down at his shoes for a moment before meeting her gaze. "I'm sorry for everything, for not supporting you sooner, for not seeing you. I was wrong. You've built something incredible here, and I was too blind to realize it." Bryn didn't say anything at first. She simply stood there, the weight of his apology hanging in the air. She had wanted this, had longed for him to see her, to acknowledge the path she had chosen. But now, standing before him, the words felt hollow. They couldn't undo the years of judgment, the dismissals, the moments when she had been made to feel less than. "I don't need your apology, Ethan," she said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "I needed you to believe in me when it mattered, not when I had already proven myself. But you didn't, and that's something I'll have to live with." His face fell, and Bryn saw the regret in his eyes. "I know. You just thought I'd fail," Bryn interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "You all thought I'd fail, and maybe that's why it hurts so much. I didn't just want your approval. I wanted you to see me, not as the family screw-up, but as someone who was worthy of being seen." Ethan took a step closer, his eyes searching hers for some sign of forgiveness. "Is there any way at all I can make it right?" Bryn looked at him for a long moment, her chest tight, her heart conflicted. She had wanted this so badly, her family's approval, their understanding. But now, standing in the space she had carved out for herself, she realized something. She didn't need them to make it right. She had already made it right. "No, Ethan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've already done that for myself." As she turned away from him, the weight in her chest felt a little lighter. She had faced them, told them her truth, and now she could move forward without looking back. Later that night, after the last of the staff had filtered out and the restaurant was finally quiet, Bryn sat alone at her usual table. The room felt different now. It wasn't just a place of work. It was her home, her victory, her sanctuary. The city lights gleamed through the windows, and she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in years, she felt free, free from the weight of their expectations, free from the need for approval. She had built this life, and it was more than she had ever dreamed of. What would you do if your greatest achievement came at the cost of family acceptance? Do you think forgiveness is something you can give when it feels like the people closest to you have never truly understood you? 100 if you feel the power of this story. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to share this story with your friends. Thanks for watching and supporting Life Stories.